Hey everyone, what's going on? Today we're learning Daf Mem Beis of Masechta Berachos. We're going to talk a little bit more about Pasaba B'Kisnin, which is some interesting stuff. What else? Yeah, then just some general stuff about, which brachas cover which things and that kind of stuff. So, without further ado, let's go. Very top of Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph, first line. Rav Huna achal tleisa rifte b'nei tlasa b'kava v'lo brich. Oh, so Rav Huna, he ate 13 of these pasaba b'kisnins, and he thought that he could just get away with only saying a brain of fashos afterwards, right? At least according to the way that Rashi learns it, which is very interesting because according to Rashi, it sounds like on pasaba b'kisnin, you're never going to say an alamichya on it, right? Kilu, if you just eat these like little bread kind of cookie kind of baked, treats that come after the meal. So if you eat them as they're intended, that you just eat a little bit of it, so you say brain nefashos afterwards. And so let's just go weiter for a second. So basically Rav Huna thought that, well, what's the difference if I eat a lot or a little bit, right? So he ate 13 of these pasaba b'kisnins, and he just made a brain of fashos afterwards. Okay. Amli Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, Adi kafna. 1 second. You just ate 13 of these. I mean, you just ate these because you were hungry. You were kovei suda on these. This was your meal. So ela kol shacherim kovim olav suda tzarich levarich. And therefore, if you eat enough that people would be kovei suda on it, right, that would be your meal, so then you would have to say Berachos Hamazon on it. So basically, this pasaba b'kisnin stuff, so if you eat them as like a snack, so then, according to Rashi, then you would just say brain of fashos afterwards. But if you would eat them as like a whole meal, so you basically just ate a lot of this bread kind of stuff, well then at that point it becomes, you would bench on it. You would say, Berachos Hamazon on it. Okay, very interesting. All right. Yeah, it's very interesting to think about, what exactly are these pasaba b'kisnins? So, and again, we're just learning according to Rashi. There's a whole world of stuff you can go into over here. And mistam we don't really paskin like Rashi because, pasaba b'kisnin. So, for example, what if we take something like berachos, right? Berachos is like a dough that you bake in an oven. I mean, it sounds to me like berachos would kind of fit the pasaba b'kisnin kind of bill, right? Some kind of dough that you bake, yet it's not exactly a bread, and you also put like cheese and all sorts of, mushrooms, all sorts of other stuff in it. So if you would, let's say, just eat like a small triangle berachos kind of thing, and you're just having it as like a snack or whatever, so you would say brain of zonos, and I guess according to Rashi, you would say brain of fashos afterwards, but we generally would say alamichya on it. But let's say you have like one of those really big berachos, like the whole meal, berachos, and you're gonna fill it with like egg and trina and charif and all sorts of stuff like that. So it would certainly sound like you're being kovei suuda on that. So at that point, would you bench on that? I mean, I could hear the argument to say yes. I don't know. It's interesting, right? But yeah, so that's what this whole pasaba b'kisnin thing. It's kind of interesting. Okay. Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva. So Rav Yehuda was making a chasana. He married his son to the daughter of Rav Yehuda bar Chaviva. Aisu lekamayu pasaba b'kisnin. Then at the wedding, I guess they finished eating, and maybe you can even say that they benched already. And then they were bringing out, dessert, and they had nuts, and they brought this bread that comes with the nuts. So ki asa shaminu dekamavarchi amotzi. And when Rav Yehuda, came from whatever he was busy with, he then came and he heard them saying, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz on the pasaba b'kisnin. Amru my tzitzi dika shemaina. What is this chirping that I hear? Dilma hamotzi lechem min haaretz kamavarchisu. Is it possible that this chirping that I hear is you clowns saying Hamotzi lechem min haaretz on pasaba b'kisnin? Amru in. Of course we're saying Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. The Tanyas, we learn in a brayso, Rabbi Mona Amar, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda, pasaba b'kisnin. Because we have a brayso in which Rabbi Mona says in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, right, the Tana Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai, he says a pasaba b'kisnin, You say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz on it. So that's why we're saying Hamotzi. V'amar Shmuel halacha Rabbi Mona. And Shmuel, your Rebbe, right? Because Shmuel was Rabbi Yehuda's teacher. And Shmuel says that the halacha is like Rabbi Mona. That you say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz on possible b'kisnin. Amalu, Rabbi Yehuda said to them, Ein halacha Rabbi Mona. The halacha is takanat, like Rabbi Mona. You don't say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz on possible b'kisnin. Okay? Itmar Amrile, so it was stated that then they responded to Rabbi Yehuda, V'amaru da Amr mishmei de Shmuel, but didn't you, Rabbi Yehuda, say in the name of Shmuel, Lachmanios ma'arvin boyan umvarchen alein amotzi? But didn't you say in the name of Shmuel that this dough that you mix together, honey and nuts and all sorts of stuff, you would say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz? So Shani Asim dekava sudase alayu. So Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, I only said that you're gonna say Hamotzi because he was being kovei suda on that stuff. But if you're not kovei suda on pasal b'kisnin, so you're not going to say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You're just going to say Boy Minei Mizonos. Okay. Rav Papa ikla levei Rav Huna breder Rav Nasin. So Rav Papa was visiting Rav Huna breder Rav Nasin. Vasu degamri suda sayu aisu lekamayu midi lemecha. Oh, very good. So they finished the suda. They didn't yet bench, but they finished the suda. They were done eating, and then after they were done eating, they brought in front of them epis to eat. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was epis. It was something. Shakor Rav Papa v'ka'achil. So Rav Papa chapped whatever they brought out over there, and he ate it. Didn't make a bracha. He just ate it. So Amalei, they said to him, Lo savela mar gomer asur melecho. So they said to Rav Papa, don't you hold of that halacha, which is that once you finish eating, you don't eat anymore? So Kilu, Rav Papa, why are you just taking this food and eating it? We should really bench first, then you should eat afterwards. So Amalu, he said to them, Salak itmar. No, that it's not about when you finish eating, it's about when you remove the table, right? Because remember, they would lean and everybody would have their own table. So once they would remove the table, at that point you don't eat anymore. But we haven't yet removed the table, so it might theoretically be finished eating, but as long as the table is still here, if they bring out more food, we can eat it without having to make a new bracha, assuming of course that we already made a bracha that would cover the food that they brought out. Okay, the Gilon changes the next word to from Rava to Rabba. So Rabba and Rab Zera iklu levei Reish Gelusa. So Rabba and Rab Zera were by the Reish Gelusa. Levasu desliku takam mikamai, and then after they had already removed the table, Shadrulu ristinam mi Reish Gelusa. So then they sent them some kind of food, right? So they were done eating. They removed the tables. They hadn't yet benched. But then they gave them some kind of surprise course. Rabba achil, Rab Zera lo achil. Rabba ate this course that they brought out for them. Rab Zera didn't eat this course. Amalei, Rab Zera said to Rabba, Lo sava lamar salak asum lecho. Don't you hold, Rabba, that once they remove the table, you're not allowed to eat until you bench? Amalei anan ataka de Reish Gelusa samchinon. He says, yeah, but we are relying upon the table of the Reish Gelusa, meaning we're not in our own houses. We don't necessarily know what's going on. If I'm at my own house, I know what we're having for the meal. I know that when the meal is over and they remove the table, we're done eating, right? So you don't eat anything else until you bench. But here we're at the Reish Gelusa, right? And right, it's all about your das. When it comes to like what brachas, right, covers which things, and when do you have to make a new bracha, right? It's all about das, right? Rashi says in Ataka the Reish Gelusa Samchinan, right? Ve'ein silukenu siluk, right? The fact that they removed the table doesn't really matter. Sheda'atenu, because our intention is im yisa masos meis pana ve'eleinu nocha, that whatever they bring in front of us, we're going to eat. I don't know what's on the menu over there, and even though they removed the table, I still have no clue. Maybe they'll bring out new stuff, and therefore, as long as my intention when I made the bracha at the beginning of the meal was that whatever they're going to bring out in front of me is going to be included, in this bracha, is going to be part of the meal. So then, now that they bring out this new course, it's covered in whatever brachas I had made up until this point. Okay, very cool. And we're going to see this come up, in a few minutes again, right? That really, in terms of like, so for example, we talked about yesterday, if you make a bracha on an olive, so it covers the apple, right? Because as long as you make a bracha on one thing, it'll cover all the other things that are the same bracha. So that's assuming that you had your intention to be eating all those things, right? But if for whatever reason your intention was only on the olive, and then maybe somebody came 5 minutes later and he brought a whole bag of apples, well then, your intention wasn't on the apples, you're going to have to make a new bracha on the apples, right? So the same thing over here. Kilu, once the meal is over, so then you're done. You had hesach hadas, you assume that it's not included in whatever brachas you made originally, so you're going to have to make a new bracha. Okay, fine. Amar Rav, haragel b'shemen shemen ma'akvo. So Rav says that somebody who normally has oil at the end of the meal, right? At the end of the meal, they would bring out some oil and you would rub it on your hands, and I don't know, I guess it was that would come at the end of the meal, like some kind of ritual, I guess. So if that's your end of meal ritual, so until that end of meal ritual happens, you can continue eating without making a bracha. Once you have that end of meal ritual of putting oil on your hands, so then you wouldn't eat until you bench. Amar Rav Ashi, ki avinon be Rav Kahana. So Rav Ashi said that when we were by the Bismedrish of Rav Kahana, Amar lan, he said to us, ki gon anon tirglinon b'mishcha me'akva lan. So Rav Kahana said that we generally have oil at the end of the meal, and then we rub our hands with this oil, and at that point the meal is over. So until we've done that, we can continue eating. Once we've done that, we don't eat until we bench. The Gemara says, but the halacha is not like any of these things. It's not that when you finish your meal, you don't eat until you bench. It's not that once they've removed the table, then it's usher to eat anything until you bench. And it's not, only once they bring out the oil, you don't eat anything until you bench. Ella, rather, Rather, it's like Rav Chia bar Ashi said in the name of Rav, Shalosh tchifos hein. There are three things that you do immediately. Techef the smicha shchita. There are certain korbanos that the person who offers the korban needs to lean on the animal before they slaughter it. So immediately after you lean on that animal, you then slaughter it. Techef legula tefila, as we've learned a few times earlier in the Masechta, smichas gula l'tefila, that immediately after you say the bracha of Klal Yisrael, you then go into your Shmoneh Esrei. Techef l'ntilas yodayim bracha, and immediately after you do netilas yadayim, which netilas yadayim? Mayim achronim, right? Some people might be familiar with mayim achronim, that before we bench, some people have the minhag to bring out water and to wash their hands before they bench. So immediately after you wash your hands, that is when you bench. So the point being that up until then, you can continue eating. Even if you finish your meal, even if they remove the table, even if you even put oil on your hands, no problem. You can continue eating with the same brachas that you had made up until then, without making new brachas, up until you do mayim achronim. Once you do mayim achronim, you then don't eat anything until you bench. Okay? Amar Abaye, afanu nomar, we'll also add one more. Techef the Talmidei Chachamim bracha. That immediately, surrounding Talmidei Chachamim is blessing. Shenema vayivaracheni Hashem biglalecha. That Lavan says to Yaakov Avinu that God has blessed me on your account. That because of you, because you are around, I've been blessed. That God blessed the house of Potiphar when Yosef was the master of the house over there, when he was the servant there. So God blessed the house of Potiphar because of Yosef. Okay? New Mishnah. Berach al hayayin shelifnei hamazon, pater hayayin shel achar hamazon. Oh, okay. So if you get to your friend's house and you're chilling there, you're drinking some wine, okay? You're drinking some wine over there before you start your meal. So it's going to cover, the bracha that you make on the wine is also going to cover, if after the meal they bring wine before benching, right? So the interesting thing is that here we're talking about before benching, right? Yesterday we were talking about pasaba b'kisnin, how they would bring out nuts and this pasaba b'kisnin before benching. After benching. So here, for whatever reason, we're talking about them bringing out all these things before benching. Okay. So the wine, when you make a bracha on the wine before you eat bread and before you start your meal, that will cover any wine that you're going to be drinking after your meal before benching. Berach ala parperes shelifnei hamazon. Now, if while you were drinking your wine before the meal, they also brought out parperes, Rashi defines that as like chicken, fish, things like that. Pater so parperes shel achar hamazon. So it also covers any stuff they're going to be having after the meal before benching. Now, the interesting thing is that the parperes that Rashi is talking about before the mazon is like chicken and fish, whereas the parperes after the mazon is things like these nuts, this possible bekisnin course. So it's interesting that why would the bracha that you make on chicken cover the bracha that you're making on these nuts and on these pastries and stuff? And that's the point is that I don't know, maybe together with that chicken you also had certain I don't know, mizonos or something like that. So we're saying that basically any brachas that you had made on this food before you started the meal is also going to cover whatever foods you're bringing after the meal, assuming that they are the same bracha. I assume. Otherwise I don't understand why a bracha on chicken would cover a bracha on nuts and pastries. So I assume that together with the chicken and stuff, they're also maybe having crackers, whatever it might be, right? Maybe it's herring and crackers. So zeo. So the brachas that you make on the wine and on these, appetizers are also going to cover whatever wine and appetizers, and like desserts, I guess, you're going to have after the meal, assuming that you made the brachas that would cover them. If you make a bracha on bread, so it covers the whatever chicken and fish you might have during the meal. So now, again, I assume that this is talking about chicken that you'd be eating with the bread. Otherwise, I don't, after what we learned yesterday about, dvarim shabayim lo machmas hasuda b'soch hasuda, things that you're not eating with bread, you would make a bracha on them. So I have to assume that when the Mishnah says that making a bracha on bread covers any, chicken and fish that you might have, also, of course, assuming that you didn't have the chicken and fish before the bread, because if you did, then of course it would be covered not from the bread, but from the fact that you already made a bracha on it, during the appetizers. So if you didn't have, let's say, this parperes before you ate the bread, and then you wash, and you had a motzi, now they bring out chicken and fish and stuff, so the bracha that you make on the bread covers it. And I have to assume that according to the way that Rashi is learning, it would be because you're eating this chicken and fish with the bread. Okay? So, ala parperes lo pater sapas. If you make a bracha on chicken and fish, then it's not going to cover the bread. You're going to have to still, make hamotzi on the bread. I guess even if you're like eating the bread and the fish together. So maybe you'll think, well, if I make a bracha on the bread, it covers the chicken and the fish when I'm eating it together with the bread. So maybe if I make a bracha on the chicken and the fish, then maybe if I then eat it together with bread, it would be covered. No, it's not. You have to make a bracha on the bread. Beishamai omrim aflo ma'aseh kedera. It even doesn't cover ma'aseh kedera. The Gemara is going to explain what's Beishamai going on when he says not even ma'aseh kedera. Okay, we'll get there. Hayoshvin. Okay, now they're done with the meal, and now they're going to bench. So if they were sitting together, so kol echad mevarich la'atzmo, so everybody has to bench on their own. Hey seibu echad mevarich l'chulin. But if they are leaning, so then one person can be motzi everybody else with the bracha achrona, with benching. Right? Rashi says, the last Rashi on the page, kol echad v'echad mevarich la'atzmo de'ein keva suda below heseba, because you don't establish a meal without leaning, and therefore if you're leaning, then one person can cover everybody else in the benching. If they're not leaning, if they're just sitting there, then everybody will have to bench on their own. Okay. So what if they didn't have wine before the meal? They only bring out wine in the middle of the meal. So they already washed, they're already eating bread, and now they bring out wine. So everybody makes their own blessing on the wine. Okay. But if they only brought the wine after they were done eating, so then one person can then make a bracha for all of them. Okay, fine. We're going to talk about this in the Gemara. V'hu omer ala mugmar, and the same person who makes the bracha on the wine after the meal is also going to make a bracha on the incense. Apparently, they used to bring out incense at the end of the meal, which is pretty interesting. And even though they only bring the mugmar after the suda, and therefore, Rashi says, they only bring it after birkas hamazon, so therefore it has nothing to do with the suda anymore. It's after the meal. It's after they've been benched. Nonetheless, the person who made the bracha on the wine, that he's sort of making a bracha on these after brachas, so he's also going to make a bracha on the incense. Okay. Now, Amar Rabbi Bachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Lo shanu ela b'shabbosos v'yom tovim, hol v'ad mukuvei sudaso al hayayin, aval b'shayimos hashanim v'varich al kol kos v'kos. Oh, so Rabbi Bachana says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that when the Mishnah says that if you make a bracha on the wine, when you get to your friend's house before the meal starts and you're eating wine and drinking wine, maybe having herring and crackers, maybe a little cake, whatever it might be, right before the meal starts. So we say that is also going to cover any wine that you're going to have after the meal, before benching. So that is only on Shabbos, because right, because on Shabbos and Yom Tiv, people are kovea suda on their wine, and therefore they assume that, okay, I'm having wine now, I'm sure I'll have wine a little bit later, so therefore it covers, the bracha that you make on the wine at the beginning of the, before the meal starts, is going to cover any wine that you're going to be consuming, in the next little bit, even after the meal is over. But any rest of the days of the year that aren't Shabbos and aren't Yom Tiv, well then you have to make a bracha. You'll make a bracha on the wine before the meal. You'll also make a bracha on the wine that comes after the meal, because you didn't assume just on a regular weekday that you're going to be drinking so much wine before the meal, after the meal. So therefore, when that second, when the wine comes later on, it's almost like a little surprising. You weren't expecting it, and therefore your intention when you made a bracha on the first glass of wine was not also on the wine that you're going to be having later, and therefore you have to make a new bracha on that. Itmar Nami was also stated, Amar Rabba Bar Mari, Amar B'Shua ben Levi, Lo Shanu Ela B'Shabbosos V'Yom Tovim, V'Shashu Adam Yotzim V'Beis HaMerchatz, V'Shas HaKazas Adam Hov Adam Koveh Sudas Al Yayin. Oh, so Rabba Bar Mari says, Nivra B'Shua ben Levi, that when we say that the bracha before the meal covers the wine after the meal, that's only on Shabbos and Yom Tiv, or when a person is coming out from the bathhouse. I guess when they would come out of the bathhouse, they would drink wine. Or if somebody is bloodletting, he would drink wine. Okay, very exciting. Because in those cases, somebody's kovea suda on the wine, so therefore it covers, the wine before the meal, after the meal. But the rest of the year, you would make a bracha on the wine before the meal, on the wine after the meal, because your da'as at the time that you made the bracha was only on the immediate glass of wine. Rabba Bar Mari ikla levei Rava b'chol. Rabba Bar Mari visited Rava's house during the week. Chazi debarach lifnei hamazon v'hada barach lachar hamazon amrle yiyasher. Right. So Rabba Bar Mari saw that Rava made a bracha on the wine that he drank before the meal, and then he made another bracha on the wine that he drank after the meal, and he said, Yasher Kayach, you did good. V'chein Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, and what you did is the same thing that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi did, to make a bracha beforehand and also a bracha on the wine after during the week. Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef ikla levei Abaye b'Yom Tiv. Now Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef visited Abaye's house on Yom Tiv. And interestingly, Abaye was making a bracha. He made a bracha on the wine that he had before the meal, and then he made another bracha on the wine that they served after the meal. So Amalei lo savar lamar lahadar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, and he said, Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef said to Abaye, he says, don't you hold of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi that on Shabbos and Yom Tiv, the bracha that you make on the wine before the meal covers the wine that you're going to have after the meal? Amalei nimlachana. He says, yeah, but I don't usually drink wine, and therefore I actually did not assume that the wine that I was going to be having before the meal was going to cover this wine. So therefore, now that I happen to be having wine, so I'm going to, that is why I'm making a new bracha on it. Very interesting. So again, you see a certain amount of subjectivity over here, right? Like even though the Mishnah says that the bracha that you make before the meal covers the wine that you're going to have after the meal, it all depends. It depends if it's Shabbos, depends if it's during the week. Even if it's Shabbos, if you don't normally have wine after the meal, well then you would make a bracha on it. It's all kind of subjective. It all depends what your intention is. Okay. So up until now we've been talking about if you have wine before the meal, does it cover the wine that you're going to have after the meal? What if you have wine? What if wine is introduced in the middle of the meal? You didn't have wine before the meal. You only have wine during the meal. Does it cover the wine that you're going to have after the meal? It's like a computer programming question, right? It's like closures in JavaScript. If you define a variable inside of a block, can you use that variable outside of the block? And in modern JavaScript, of course, it depends, how you define the variable, with what keyword you used. Right? Anyways. So if you're going to say, well, if you make a bracha on the wine before the meal, so it covers the wine after the meal, okay. Well, I'll say mishum dezel lishtos v'zel lishtos. That's because the wine that you're drinking before the meal and the wine that you're drinking after the meal, it's both just to enjoy it. You're just drinking, you're just drinking the wine to drink it. But in this case, where, you're drinking the wine in the meal, like, to complement your food, right? To wash down your food. So you're not drinking it purely to enjoy it. You're also drinking it as a functional part of eating a meal. So therefore, maybe the wine that I'm making, as part of my eating, right? The wine that I'm drinking as part of my eating, the bracha that I'm making on that won't cover the wine that I'm going to have after the meal just to enjoy it. Or maybe it doesn't matter. And if I make a bracha on the wine during the meal, it'll cover the wine that I'm having after the meal. So Rav Amar Poter. So Rav says that the bracha during the meal covers the wine after the meal. Rav Kana Amar Eino Poter. Rav Nachman Amar Poter. Rav Sheshes Amar Eino Poter. Rav Huna Rav Yehuda V'chotamida the Rav Amar Eino Poter. So basically everyone has a different idea over here. Everyone's got a different opinion. Some people say, yeah, the bracha on the wine will cover the wine afterwards. Some people say it doesn't. It's a mess, right? No, there's no clear answer. It's for Rava Rav Nachman. So Rava asked Rav Nachman. Now, of course, Rav Nachman was one of the rabbis who said that the bracha that you make on the wine during the meal will cover the wine after the meal. So Rava asked him a kasha. Our Mishnah said that if they bring wine out in the middle of the meal, everybody makes their own bracha. That then when afterwards they bring out new wine, one person can make a bracha for all of them. So doesn't that sound like even though they already made brachas during the meal, they still have to make a bracha after the meal, and that's why one person is making it for them? Rav Nachman responds to him, no. This is what it's saying. No, if they didn't bring wine during the meal, they only brought wine after the meal. So then in that case, one person would make a bracha for them. But Rav Nachman would stick to his opinion that if they brought wine during the middle of the meal and they already made a bracha, so then it would cover the wine that they bring after the meal. Okay, very, very, very good. Now, that opinion of Beis Shammai about the Ma'aseh Kedera in the Mishnah. Let's take a look at that. Berach al pas pater sapaperes. So if you make a bracha on the bread, it covers whatever chicken you're going to be having. Okay? Al paperes lo pater sapas. Make a bracha on the chicken, it's not going to cover the bread. Okay? Now I assume that it's assuming that you're eating, at least according to Rashi, it's assuming that you're eating the chicken mamash on top of the bread, with the bread. If you're having it separately, I would assume that you'd have to make a bracha on it. But if somebody has a different idea, I'd mamash love to hear it, because it's certainly not super clear. Bishami aflo ma'aseh kedera, and Bishami says it doesn't even cover ma'aseh kedera. So ibayu, that's a kasha. Bishami areisha plige or dilma seifa plige. When Bishami says it doesn't even cover ma'aseh kedera, are they talking about in the reisha or the seifa? So are we talking about the reisha? The Amar Tanakama. The Tanakama says berach ala pas pater sapar peres, that if you made a bracha on the bread, so then it also covers the chicken. V'chol shekain ma'aseh kedera, and certainly it would also cover ma'aseh kedera, which is chameshes minei dagan, right? So if the bracha on the bread covers the chicken or the fish, the parperes, so then certainly it'll cover chameshes minim, which is ma'aseh kedera, like a porridge kind of thing. But also Beishamai says no. Lo mi baya parperes de lo patra. Beishamai is saying no. The bread does not cover the chicken, right? De lo patra lupas ela afilu ma'aseh kedera nami lo patra. And the bread not only does it not cover the chicken, but it doesn't even cover ma'aseh kedera, which is chameshes minei dagan. O dilma, or maybe a seifa plige, or maybe Beis Shammai is going on the later part of the Mishnah, where Dikatani, where it says berach ala paperes lo pater sapas, that if you make a bracha on the chicken, it won't cover the bread, and you're going to have to make a separate bracha on bread. Pasu dilo pater va ma'aseh kedera pater. The implication being that if you make a bracha on chicken, it doesn't cover bread, but maybe it does taka cover ma'aseh kedera. And Bisham is coming to say that no, the chicken doesn't cover the bracha on the bread, and not even ma'aseh kedera. And the Gemara says, Teku, we don't know what Bishamai is going on. Go figure. So when it comes to benching, if they're all sitting together, so they all have to bench on their own. But if they're all leaning together, then one person can be motzi everybody else for benching. You can just have them in mind and bench, and they listen, and then that would work. Hesebu in lo, hesebu lo. So the Gemara asks, the davka have to be leaning, but if they were just kind of sitting there, but if they were sitting, then they would all have to bench on their own. V'raminu, we have a contradiction. Asar shayu hochin baderech. So if you have 10 people and they're walking, and while they're walking, they're eating. Even though the mom is sharing the same loaf of bread, everyone needs to make their own. They all have to bench on their own. But if they sat down to eat, even though everybody's eating from their own loaf of bread, one person can make a bracha for all of them. And it says there that as long as they sat down, then one person can be motzi all of them. It doesn't say that they were leaning. It just says that as long as they sit down, one person can bench for everybody. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, yeah, the reason why that works, that when they're sitting, that one person can be motzi everybody else for benching, even though they're not leaning, it's because they had already said, look, we're going to stop at a certain place and we're going to eat there. And because they had already set up that we're going to be eating at a certain place, it means that they were kovei suda over there, and even though they weren't leaning, that doesn't really matter. That's a technicality, and as long as they're sitting, that is enough. The implication being also, kilu, we don't really have the minhag to lean nowadays, right? We just kind of sit around the table. So, if you invite somebody over for a meal, let's say on Shabbos or something like that, and they come over and you're eating, you stumble, one person would theoretically be able to bench and be motzi everybody else because you clearly established that you're going to be eating together. Although nowadays we don't really do so often that one person benches for everybody, but I don't know, maybe people do it. When Rav died, so his students went to the burial, wherever the burial was. When they were on their way back from the burial, they said, and they said, okay, when we get to Nahar Dank, the Dank River, we're going to eat. And then after they were done eating, they then asked a question. Hey, Sebu Davkatanan, Aval Yashvulo, Odumakem da Amre, the Amri, Nezel Venechol, Rifta Beduchta Plan Yosa, Kie Sebu Dami. So then they said, wait a second, so we're not exactly leaning, we're sitting, but we did make up to specifically eat at the Dank River. So, and they were trying to remember, when the Mishnah says that if they were leaning, one person could be motzi them, is that dafka if they're leaning and we're not leaning, so we wouldn't be able to have one person be motzi everybody else? Or is it as long as, or even though we're just sitting, since we said that we're going to eat at this specific place, then it's as though we're leaning and one person would be able to be motzi everybody else, and lo hava biadayu, and they didn't know the answer. They couldn't remember the answer. Kam Rav Ada bar Ahava. So Rav Ada bar Ahava was one of the students of Rav. He got up, and he had already torn kriya, right? He had already torn his shirt because Rav, his teacher, had died. So he took his shirt and he flipped it around backwards so that the tear of his shirt from when he tore kriya was now on his back, and he tore a fresh tear on the front of his shirt again. He put the tear in the back of his shirt, the kara kriya acharina, and he now tore kriya a new time on the front of on his chest. Amor, he said, he said, our teacher Rav has died, and we don't even know how to bench anymore. Something so basic where we're like lost without Rav. It's a humongous loss. Until a certain elder came, which the tradition would generally be that was Eliyahu Hanavi, Ramlu Masnisan Abraisa, and he asked this kasha that we asked before, right, about these people who are walking and sharing a bread, and as long as they sit down, they could bench because they had made up to eat in a certain place. So one person can be motzi them. V'shani lehu kevin da'amrei nezel v'nechol lachmum doch plan kasei budami. And Eliyahu Hanavi told them that since you guys made up to eat, at a specific place, you can have one person be motzi everybody else. So that's some interesting stuff about which brachas cover other brachas, and my machronim came up today, and possible bekisnin in yonim. So some interesting stuff, and looking forward to studying with y'all tomorrow. Peace out, friends.